Everyone, we want to welcome you to the Deeper Dive podcast, where we take the message from the weekend and we keep the conversation going during the week. I'm Nate Murray. I'm the Bay City campus pastor for Hopevale Church. We are in the Great Lakes Bay region of Michigan, which includes Saginaw, includes Bay City. It includes Midland and all the surrounding areas and points in between. Today, I'm joined by my friend and my fellow pastor here at Hopevale, Brent Ferris. Brent,
what's up, man?
You brought it yesterday.
Thank you.
The message, I mean.
Yeah, I also brought myself, which was I had a bag of clothes too for the FX thing, so I brought a lot.
It was a long day. We'll talk about
it. Was a great day.
We'll talk about FX towards the end. But I wanted to know, Brent, if we could get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
So we did this last week with Pastor Billy Petty, and would love to do it with you too, so that our people can get to know you a little bit better. Your wife and yourself moved to Texas a few years ago, before then coming back to Michigan. And I know a little about Texas because that's where I grew up and
our native
where
land.
I moved from. So people ask us if we miss Texas, and there's two things we miss. We don't miss the nasty heat. We don't miss a variety of things that you get there. We do miss the people, first and foremost, and we miss the food.
Yes.
So I wanted to talk to you about Texas food.
2 for
That's
2.
okay.
Yeah. Yep.
All
okay.
right. So the two types of food in Texas I feel like stand out are barbecue and Tex-Mex. So tell us your favorite Texas barbecue joint.
Oh, yeah.
And why it's your favorite.
Yeah, my favorite is called Cooper's.
Okay.
And Cooper's is in Llano, Texas.
Okay.
Kind of a hidden gem, if you will. You got to drive to it.
Yeah, and this is Texas logic here. It should be Llano, but oftentimes in Texas, Texans call it, because it's two L's in Spanish.
Yep.
You hear a variety of pronunciations. A lot of the time people call it Llano, which is funny. But anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cooper's is there.
Cooper, yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
Worth it.
Very much so.
What I love about Cooper's is their barbecue is more of a dip.
Okay.
Like the au jus type feel, and not like a sauce.
Yeah.
So it's not tomato based. It's, it's based with vinegar.
Yeah.
And it marinates the whole thing. It's so
yeah.
good.
So tell us, what is it that Texas barbecue has figured out? What makes it just in general stand out? Because I know you do your own smoking and stuff. You cook up briskets, all that kind of stuff. So
yes,
and you do it Texas style. So
I do.
What makes Texas barbecue Texas style?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the longevity. It's the letting the meat, particularly a brisket, which is a really tough meat, break down within itself, and that's how you get that juicy, falls apart, melts in your mouth kind of taste. And they let the smoke and the salt and pepper do the talking, so they don't really
instead of the barbecue sauce, right?
Yeah, the barbecue sauce is always a hit. I'm a sauces guy. I believe food is a vehicle for sauces, so I get really excited about sauce.
Yeah,
but when you don't need it, you're in it. You're doing something right.
That's right.
And if you prefer it, that's fine. Yeah. In Texas, it's not really that offensive, but you got to try it without it first.
Yep.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so when they have this Texas style is really letting the smoke do the work. Clean smoke, not a dirty smoke, which there's a difference. It's all sorts of fun stuff like that.
Wow. So you guys, you tuned in for the deeper dive, and a little bonus, you got a little culinary sprinkle on.
Yes, I dropped a brisket the other day.
Yeah, you sent me pictures of it.
It was unbelievable.
Oh my gosh,
it was so good.
I nearly canceled our family trip.
It was so good. It might have been worth it, but I'm glad you got to be with your family.
Yeah,
that's a really important thing.
The family trip was awesome, but the brisket looked special.
Oh man, it was wild. Yeah,
that's awesome.
They actually use a twisted oak in Texas because it's more plentiful of a wood. It's a hardwood with twisted. It's a good wood. So you get more of the smoky flavor. I use a maple. So you get some of that kind of that sweetness into the brisket. So that's kind of the difference between maybe my brisket versus if you were in Texas, you might feel it might get more smoky of a flavor than we get more of a sweet flavor.
Wow. How about that? So if you stop by the Ferris household on a random weekend,
you got to time it right.
You might just find yourself enjoying some home-cooked brisket. That's awesome. So you shared a sad, juicy pastor joke.
I did.
that I hadn't heard since seminary
Yes.
during your message.
Very good.
So courageous of you.
It felt right.
Okay, good. So I thought we'd start with some dad jokes.
Awesome.
See if I can get you to laugh.
Okay.
So on the hierarchy of jokes, you've got, normal jokes, then dad jokes. Pastor jokes are probably like the highest level. And you went there and you pulled it off. So kudos.
Thank you.
So here's some dad jokes. Let's see if I can get you or our producer, Amber.
Oh,
There she is.
there she is. You can hear her.
To laugh. She's already laughing. Okay. I've got 4.
Okay.
That may be one too many.
Am I trying not to laugh?
Try not to laugh.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. And if I ask you a question, you can respond.
Okay.
So, Brent, I'm concerned. I think someone in these offices may be an owl.
I don't think I get it.
Amber?
I don't get it either.
You're supposed to say who.
Oh.
And then I narrow my eyes
And then you
suspiciously.
say to me.
Get it?
I get it now.
All right. Now you're warmed up. Let's try another one.
I'm supposed to respond is what I'm getting.
So, Brent, I took up origami for a while, but I gave it up. It was too much paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good. All right, 2 more. Only 2 more. Savor them while they last. Brent, why shouldn't you wear glasses when you play football?
I don't know.
It's a contact sport.
Nice. Yeah. As
Yeah.
a glasses contact wearer, that. Yep.
Yeah, it resonates with you.
Uh-huh.
All right, last one. Amber, I'm hoping to get you with this one. That was easy, and we're done.
Target rich environment.
Last night, my son asked me for a bookmark. He's 12 years old, and he still doesn't know my name. That was the strongest one.
That
So
was a good one. Yeah, it's a good one to end on. Because his
Yeah.
name's not Mark, if you needed. It's Nate.
It's Nate.
Yeah.
My name's Nate, not Mark. I still gave him a book, though, just for the record.
Good.
So now that we're loosened up, great job with the message.
Thank you.
You always do a great job, Brent. Always. And I know you take the message seriously, and I really appreciate that. So I'm fascinated with preparation for the message and how different people get ready to communicate and the outlines that they use, all that kind of good stuff. So you bring messages on a consistent basis with our students, right? So how does preparing for a message in the big room with the adults and the live stream and all that kind of stuff, how does that differ for you from preparing for a message with your students? Is there a difference? And if there is, what do you do differently?
Yeah, it's really not that different.
Okay.
I know the rooms now.
Yeah.
So now I'm a lot more comfortable in both rooms where
Okay.
before the student room was definitely my comfort zone.
Right.
But the prep stuff is still putting in, making sure you don't want to be up there saying something you don't know.
Right.
And you don't want to be up there saying something that's not true. I
Right.
mean, there is a calling when you teach to rightly divide the word of truth and
Yeah.
to make sure one of my biggest goals in my career that I get better at, I think, as I get older is clarity. Just be really crystal clear on what you're saying and try not to confuse it.
Yeah.
So I don't do a whole lot of multiple point messages.
Right.
I don't do like I'm going to give you 3 points in 3 different ways. I would break that up.
3 points in a poem.
Yeah, like I don't do that. I really try to say, okay, this is the thing that I'm talking about, and I try
Right.
to tell you everything about that
That's really good.
that I can.
That's really, really good. We're halfway through the series that we're in, Unstoppable, where we're looking at the Acts Church and the movement of hope that started there and how that continues today. Your message focused on Acts 3 and 4, right? The healing of the lame man or the crippled man near the fountain. Loved what you shared. I wanted to highlight just a couple of important things that I felt like stood out to me. First of all, you talked a little bit about resurrection, and you were also involved recently in a series that we did called We Believe, where we talked about some of our beliefs. For us as Christians, and at Hopevale too, the resurrection is a big deal. So for people that may be new to this and they're just learning, they're growing in their faith, why is the resurrection important? You talked about how for those people in the Acts church, the resurrection was important. So why is it so important to Christianity that Jesus was resurrected after his crucifixion?
Yeah, I mean, there's this idea that when the Messiah would come down, he would rule, and people thought that he was going to come down and he was going to conquer Rome.
Right.
And because Rome at that time was the powerhouse, the political powerhouse, it was the military powerhouse of everywhere. And so they thought he was going to come down with this, raise an army up, and we're going to roll, and then we're going to have our land back. And what Jesus did instead, came down, and he came down humbly as a servant, and he rolled a different war, and he waged a different war, which was on the wages of our sin, which went all the way back to the creation story, where Adam and Eve disobey the one rule, sin enters the world, and he went back to fix the problem, not fix the circumstances. And so the resurrection is Jesus beating the grave, which means if Jesus doesn't raise from the dead and he just died to forgive you of your sin, that's cool, but it only takes you to par. It just breaks you even. But when he rose from the dead, he justified us and traded his righteousness, which gives us right standing in front of God. Without the empty grave, without the resurrection of Jesus, there's really not a whole lot to celebrate, because at the end of the day, you still die. But the hope that we have is that when you die in the Christian world, when you believe in Jesus, that the death on earth is life in Jesus, and that you can live the life with Jesus, and then you will be with Jesus in the presence of God. And that's the beauty of it. So the resurrection is like it's the cornerstone. I mean, it's everything. If you could disprove that, which people have tried, and it doesn't go well. If you could, frankly, we would not be talking about it today. Because
he'd
they
just
would
be a man,
have
another great teacher.
Great teacher, a lot of wisdom.
Not
we got
the
these
Son of
cool
God,
writings.
though.
Not the Son of God who beat the grave.
I love when we're mindful of the people that are not as far down the journey as we are. And so we had people in the service, I'm sure yesterday, people that'll tune in this week, and we sometimes as believers take for granted, we celebrate Easter, which is all about the resurrection of Jesus, and for us it's a part, we've integrated it into our story. And sometimes it's good to be reminded that it is a cornerstone, and there's reasons it's a cornerstone, and Jesus fulfilling prophecies that set him apart, including that he would die and be resurrected, and love your explanation of that. So thank you for delving into that. And then you talked about defining moments also, with a really great personal illustration there to help us understand defining moments. And I wanted you're a challenger, you're an Enneagram 8, you're a challenger, so I'm going to challenge you a little bit right now, because I know you respond well to that. And so in terms of defining moments, I loved everything that you talked about in those moments that are important in our life. But what would you say to someone, because you had a defining moment, the one that you shared, and it went really well, right? Yep. You made a good choice. What would you say to people who step into a defining moment and they don't make the good choice? Maybe they know what they should do, they don't do it. What would you say to people who think that God wants to punish them for their sin? Maybe they had that defining moment, it didn't go well, and now they feel like God's out to get them. Or they had that defining moment, it didn't go well, and they're feeling unworthy of love. What would you say to people in that situation?
Well, oh man, that's such a big question.
Deeper dive, baby. That's what we're here to do.
When you think about the gospel, so, let's take you up to that defining moment. You've probably made stupid decisions before that. That one just felt bigger to you. And so when you did the wrong decision, you feel like God's against you. But if God was against you, he would have been against you before that moment, leading up to it. You know what I'm saying? Because you're still living in sin. But the beauty of grace is that you don't get what you deserve. And so we have a God who doesn't act against you. He's actually for you. And he invites you. And so through Jesus, you can be invited into that presence. And he's like, I don't actually care where you've been, but I care where you're going to be. And because of that, I sent my son. So that's the gospel. It's the beauty of grace, is that it makes life not fair. And when life's not fair, that means you don't get what you deserve. And people, I think sometimes, and I also think like there's this big ideology out there that, especially in the Christian world, like something goes wrong in your life and like God's mad or Satan's against you. And so, you know, I just don't believe that Satan works like that in the spiritual realm. Like I feel like he doesn't come against you. I feel like he comes alongside you, try to pull you off course. And so like I feel like there's this more, it's more of like a let me lure you,
Right.
let me deceive you,
Right.
let me pull you a little, not gonna punch you in the face.
And those defining moments, that's when we don't make a good choice in those moments, that can be then fertile ground for him to mislead us then.
Yeah, and your
because he
identity.
piles on the guilt, he
Oh,
piles
dude,
on
yeah.
the shame. There's that cycle of shame and guilt that can take place that you feel like you can't get out of.
And you can even do that. Like you can even he tries to pile that on even when you made the right choice.
Yeah.
You made the right choice, and he says, you see,
You
things
could have
aren't
made a righter choice.
things aren't going so well, are they?
Yeah.
Man, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, God's not for you.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there thinking, oh, I lost my job because I stood up for my character. And Satan's like, oh, yeah, that's the God you serve. And
Yeah.
then God's over there like, yeah, but I got another one for you. Like, we're good.
Yeah.
Don't listen to this guy. And it's that deceiving. And it's not the deceiving, again, it's not this deception that you walk around and people just tell you things that are not true. It's this, what happens between your ears. And your mind is your greatest foe because you know you better than anybody knows you.
Right.
And you can talk you into doing something stupid
Right.
better than anybody you know.
So true. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you like, we count peer pressure, but also I chose that. So there's there's really this war waging between your ears. And the war is about what's truth and what's a lie.
Yeah. Seeing
And-
what's true.
Yeah. And this is why
Believing it's
the
true,
Christian
yeah.
community is a beautiful thing. This is why Sunday morning isn't enough.
Okay.
Because community,
about that.
Yeah,
Let's
you
go there.
need people that are going to pour truth into you. They're going to speak truths into you. And when you're having a down day or you got something going on, those words of encouragement or those text messages saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, you're doing the right thing.
Right.
Hey, man, I believe in this with you."
Or to call you out when you voice something that's not true. To say
Yeah.
like, that's not true. You know?
Yeah, like, yeah,
you're
the-
believing something that's not true. Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
can't do that between your ears by yourself. Like you need
Right.
people, and
That's
that's
really
where the community of believers, and we see in Acts. I mean, they're under a lot of persecution. They're under a lot of stress. I mean, there's a
Right.
lot going on, and it's just growing because they're coming together, saying, "We together are going to speak truths to each other,
Yeah.
and we're not going to speak lies."
And think about the way our God's a God of restoration and redemption. That's what Jesus offers. That's why we have hope. And you think about the hero of the story in this passage, Peter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had a couple defining moments that didn't go so well.
Yeah, and they
Right.
wrote it down.
Yeah.
They told
Yeah,
us.
right. And
Poor Pete.
everybody heard about it. You think you messed up and caught flack for it. Yeah. So Peter, it was predicted, right? Jesus said, you're going to have a defining moment. It's not going to go so well.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Well, and then you take
But
Jesus
God.
in that same story. So Peter denies Jesus three
Right.
times, and then they have breakfast on the beach after Jesus raises, and what does he do? He restores him 3 times. He speaks life into him 3 times, saying, every time you denied me, I'm going to restore. And I mean, just imagine that moment with Peter.
yeah.
I mean, you're carrying the weight. You're so excited to see your best friend. And at
Yeah.
the same time, you're like, oh, the last time we made eye contact,
Yeah, it didn't go
this
well.
wasn't a good day.
Yeah.
And that restoration process with Jesus is so beautiful. I think this is the stuff you do really well. You get in there with people and you work the ground and you see restoration stories all through your career, but really like we've seen them now in Bay City, and you see the overflow of that in Saginaw, and we've got people we've both communicated through that you just see God doing amazing things, and it's a blast
Yeah, it's the best
to
thing
see
ever.
people go through that and feel and know that they're restored
Yeah.
and redeemed and on fire.
Yeah. The defining moment in a lot of ways, this is one of the things I thought about last night as I was thinking through the message that you shared yesterday morning. They are defining moments, and to kind of turn a corner to talk more about what you said about ordinary, unschooled people filled with the Holy Spirit. Those defining moments, if you make a good choice, that's outstanding. if you don't make the best choice, in either case, the opportunity is for it to define not who you are, but who God is.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you make the right choice, glory to God, right? If you make a bad choice, God brings restoration and hope to those who have made mistakes. So in either case, the defining moment not only defines stuff about our life, but it defines God.
Yeah.
And both of those situations are a chance to highlight who Jesus is. And there's a quote that I think about a lot that a guy named Campbell said, and it's, "You are the hero of your own story." And that's what's true in the natural world. But for us, if we can flip the switch and instead see Jesus as the hero of our story, those thoughts between your ears that you were talking about, a lot of that revolves around us being the hero of our own story.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're filtering it through that, that's where we run into trouble. And that's why we do need all those friends you're talking about. That's why we need this fellowship of believers, because they're the ones that can say, you're not the hero of your own story.
Yeah.
Jesus is the hero of your story. So what is he doing? You made a mistake. You did something great either way, but what is Jesus going to do with it?
Yep.
And that's what gets us back on track. So thank you for bringing us to that yesterday. Made me think a lot last night. So love all those thoughts. There was way too much. I know you keep it simple, but there was so much good stuff, and we don't have time to get into all of it. But you said the 4 markers of Peter and John were that they were filled with the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
They were courageous, they were unschooled, and they were ordinary.
Yeah.
I sensed a lot of passion coming through there. So I sensed there was more to the story, or maybe we talk about the cutting room floor sometimes too, that you couldn't get into everything. So if you had a couple more minutes to delve into that, what would you say about that particular point, about those 4 markers of Peter and John? And then you use the imagery of boundaries versus runways. So lobbing it up to you.
Thank you. So one of my defining moments in my life was when I was at seminary. I won't tell you which seminary, and I won't tell you who said this, because I don't want them to get in trouble. I was at seminary. I was in this class. It was one of my favorite professors of all time. I mean, I'm counting every class I've ever been in. He was amazing. He brought the Bible history to life. I mean, it was like, what is going on? He gave me a paper, and he said, see me after class. Then I'm like, oh, what did I do wrong? Right. So I go to him after class. I'm kind of one of those guys. I like to kind of get things out of the way. And so I'm sitting through class thinking about it. I go up to him and I say, hey, you want to talk? He goes, let's go to my office. Okay. So I walk up with him to his office, and he sits me down, and he said, why are you at seminary? And I said, and then before I could speak, he says, let me guess. Somebody told you that you needed a degree from seminary to do what you believe God has called you to do. I said, that's pretty much the size of it. And he said, the God you serve is too small. So I want to encourage you to stop coming to seminary. Wow. I want to encourage you to read your Bible and read theology and study it and know it. He says, it's very important. Right. But one of the things that he communicated to me in that day was, there are things that you do every morning, because I would shake his hand, I'd look him in the eye, I'd ask him, how's he doing? Get there a little early, have a little conversation with him. He was like, those are things we can't teach you. Those are things that are just you, and you need to start working in the church immediately. And I was like, are you serious? Because I was told I needed this to do what I think I'm going to be doing someday. And he was like, no, I'm very serious. If your God needs a piece of paper, then you need to study him more. Wow. And so there is a little bit of, I'm putting all of my eggs in that basket. Yeah. I frankly is through the leading of this guy who's been a megalodon in my life, that walking with the Spirit, being bold and courageous in what he's calling you to do, even though I don't have the schooling, and I mean, by all accounts, I'm ordinary. I'm just a guy. And to see that God can use that, I can't take credit for my own credentials, because I don't have the sheet of paper that says I have them. Right. I have 10 years of experience and study, and I've grown and learned so much in conversations about theology with guys that are really smart and really fun to talk to.
Yeah.
And that's been my career. And I remember making a moment. I mean, that was my wife and I. We were just getting married, and we made a decision together that this is something for us that we believe God will do, regardless of what everybody else does in our world. And it's not to say that I wouldn't enjoy it. I just, at this point, I'm like, give me the test. I've studied it for a long time. And I'm still growing. Yeah. And that's the hard part, is to think of stepping into, Dan and I just talked about this, like even this Holy Spirit, like there's more of him to go get. And I'm I'm growing in who the Holy Spirit is and how he works and what he does. And there are a couple of elements that are kind of things I didn't grow up in that I'm still, I don't know, I'm still working through. And all of that together has compiled into this trying to serve a God that is much bigger than my brain can give him credit for. Yeah. And trusting that he knows what he's doing.
That's really good.
And that passion came from way deep.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, it's not meant to be, but it's something I stand on, because a guy that I really trust, who didn't have to tell me anything, led by the Spirit, told me something, and it defined how we would do ministry. And that's why we engage young people to do ministry all the time. Yeah. That's why we have a resident program, because I believe that God doesn't need you to be super smart or super old to do great, cool things through him. As long as you're doing them through him, he's going to do them through you.
That's really good.
I believe that, and I'm trying to live that.
So youth and education, you talked about boundaries versus runways. So for the people that listen to the message, the people that might be listening to this, education and age, you listed both of those. What are some other boundaries that are like perceived boundaries that people have for themselves, that you said, we have these things we consider to be boundaries or obstacles. The reality is they're runways that God wants to use. So you've got youth and education. That's two things. What are some other things that people perceive as boundaries that are actually runways that God wants to use?
Yeah, I think people that let's go to your work environment. You feel like you're in a dead-end job. But I believe you're strategically placed. Yeah. I believe you're there on purpose for a purpose. You're not actually there to make money for the man. Right. You're there to do more. Right. And I had the cutting room floor. I had this whole list of, these are the people that you want to work for. Right. And these are the people that want you to work for them. You want to be that person that is, you don't have all the education, but man, we really, really love whatever that is. Right. What is that? And you're like, well, that's not me. That's something that I'm believing in that's bigger than me, because you treat people better when you see people not as a means to the end, but as an image bearer of the God you serve. Right. You treat people different. Right. You care for people differently. You serve people differently, and you care for the environment you work in differently, because this is a gift for me. Right. I'm given this. And I think that's one. It's a big one. I think of we're in stay-at-home mom world right now. And that particular group of women that have gone through that and are going through that, I pray for you, because you may think that this season right now is the hardest, worst. It's not going anywhere. You wake up, you change diapers, you feed kids, you get to naps, you change diapers, you put on a movie over and over. Yeah. It feels like this endless cycle and drudge, but it is so valuable to the lifeblood of your family. Yeah. That you are so strategically placed in this moment. You're going to have stories on stories on stories of your kids, and this gift that happens so fast. They grow up. Everybody tells you they grow up so fast, and you're like, you're just old, and you get there and you're like, oh wow, yeah. Everybody warned me. I didn't believe it till now.
Yeah, that I have to be careful walking over to the kids wing in Saginaw, because they have that display up on the wall that lists how old your kids are and then how many weeks you have left. Oh, it kills me every time, because a couple years have passed since we got here. And I remember the first time we visited, we saw that and we're like, oh, wow, we don't have much time left. And then I remember looking at it recently, was here for something and walked over there and was like, oh my gosh, we just lost 100 weeks.
Yeah.
And
it went just like that.
Yeah, it does. It goes so fast. But that work of being a stay-at-home parent is so important.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
And even seasons when your kids are younger, as a dad, like I'm trying to get home earlier. That won't be forever.
Right.
So there's some things I'm saying no to at work, and kind of people are like, hey, when are you gonna get that done? I'm like, I would love to, but right now I just need to be home.
Right.
And I need to get home at time, and I need to have dinner with my family, and these are really important pieces, because there's going to be a day where they're out with their friends, and I work with those students. They don't want to hang out with me. Like, they're going to be with their friends, and they're going to be at their house and this house.
And it may seem like a boundary to have all of your time planned for you, basically when they're young. But not only is it important, the work that we do as parents with our kids and what we're investing in them, but then Jesus does so much through our kids to teach us and to shape our hearts. And so that's great. Great example of what we perceive as a boundary is actually a runway to what God has for us.
Yeah, and we don't know. The hard part is these are slow burns. It's brisket, not steak. I mean, you're spending time on this, and it's a slow cooked thing. And sometimes you can miss that vision in the weeds of what's happening. It's the days are long, and what is that? Days are long and the years are short. And it's so true. We just don't want to believe in that because the days are long.
Right.
And I just feel and you get stay-at-home parents. I won't even seclude it to moms, because there's some stay-at-home dads that are rocking it out, doing amazing fatherdom, and you're crushing it, guys. Keep going, And then you've got the job stuff. Like, you're in this job, and then you've got these other two, that maybe these like things that feel confining,
right?
But they're only a season,
right?
And when that gate releases, it's gonna be wild in your life. It's gonna be unbelievable to see how cool it was to go through. And hindsight is always 20/20. You got to get beyond it to look back at it, and that's really I don't want people making the mistake of living beyond it before they're past it.
Yeah.
Because I'd really love for you to experience it, be in it, and enjoy it. It's just really good.
Yeah. So we see this group of ordinary people in the Acts church, this unstoppable movement of hope that's created as they depend upon the Holy Spirit to give them power and make them extraordinary. I think the exact quote you said, you can be extraordinary if it's not about you. So all these things we see as boundaries that we think make us ordinary. We all know what makes us ordinary, right? We all know the areas we think we're lacking and the things that make us ordinary. But I love that encouragement that you can be extraordinary as long as it's not about you, right? As long as it's about who Jesus is, what he's doing, what the Spirit is doing to allow us to join Jesus in his work in this world. Loved all of that. So your bottom line involved 4 steps. So again, I know the message time on Sunday is short when you're preparing for it, and there's so much you want to say. So wanted to give you a chance to walk us back through those 4 steps again. You said we need to believe, connect, trust, and focus. So walk us back through that again, but I'm going to give you some, you can pick a specific example, but if we're going to get super practical, I'm going to throw out a couple of examples, and you pick one and walk us through that process of what it's like to believe, connect, trust, and focus in that. So maybe your kid's getting bullied at school. You have that experience. They're coming home. It's not going well. How do you as a parent walk through those 4 steps? That's one. Maybe you lost a job. So maybe it was unexpected. You thought you were killing it at work, and you get a pink slip and you just lost your job. How do you believe, connect, trust, and focus? Walking through that. Or like a cancer diagnosis, either you or someone that you love gets a terrible diagnosis. So there's 3 choices. You pick one, walk us through believing, connecting, trusting, and focusing in that.
Yeah. The blanket over all 3 of those is, again, circumstances aren't the end game. So that belief piece is that there's a hope out there, that we're living for something. We're not living for this world. There's something more coming, and it's better and it's good. So that belief system of when you engage and believe in the empty grave, you have this inheritance. You are heirs with Christ, which means this presence of God is yours for the taking, really. And believing that your circumstances are not going to dictate your future is a very important thing. And that's big. In your bullying scenario, your job loss scenario, and your cancer diagnosis. Just believing in that these circumstances, though they aren't ideal and though they are hard,
right,
you still got to do the parent thing. You still got to love your kid and help them through that, walk them through, but we don't know what that's teaching you.
Right.
And
what's teaching them.
Yeah. Like it's so weird. And then even the bullying one right out the gate, the reality of you have a real life, real opportunity to live the gospel. As a young person being bullied, you have the opportunity to forgive them every day. And they don't deserve it. As a matter of fact, in the world's they deserve justice.
Right.
But you have the opportunity to give them grace.
So it's believe, now connect.
Yes, you can only connect. You got to connect with Jesus. You got to, some of it's you got to know what we're reading. And I think I have this kind of fear that at one point Luther put his life on the line to get this into where you and I could read it. And now, like the Bible, I'm talking about the Bible, like he printed it in the native language and let people read it and said, you should be able to have access to this. And then got excommunicated from the Catholic Church, and he got the Lutheran sect, and he got all this stuff. Okay. He did all that, and all we're doing here now is saying, I don't really want to read it.
Right.
It's not that valuable. There are people who are dying, literally, to get a Bible into the country, and we have it as like a coaster. That bothers me in a big way as a pastor.
So connecting, one of the best ways to connect then is to dive into the Word.
It's to dive in and just get to know Jesus, get to know what kind of Jesus we're talking about.
Right.
The woman at the well and the man born blind, where he makes mud with his spit, which is really gross and really creative at the same time. And
there's ways to connect there with those different scenarios. Jesus ran into some of that, just picking bullying off the top. The religious leaders, including the Sadducees and Pharisees, they did some bullying, and you can see the way Jesus stood up for the people that were at the wrong end of their spiritual bullying, right? And the harsh words he had for the bully, stood up for them. The heart that he has for those that are oppressed. That's really good.
And he's setting you, and he's coming with a promise that I'm going to set you free.
Yeah.
That you're, again, current circumstances and future are not aligned.
Right.
Because of what I'm doing. Now they could be. You could let your circumstances define your future, or you can let Jesus define your future. And those two tracks take
And that's where trust comes in, right?
And that's where trust comes in. So once you connect to Jesus, now you got to trust what he says. And that the story's not over. I tell this to a lot of young men and women who are wrestling with some anxiety and some depression and maybe even suicidal thoughts. Say, hey, look, the story's not done.
Right.
You've got years of story left. You've got a long time to go. There's more to write.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying those things aren't real. I'm saying while those things are real, as you connect and you trust, you could rewrite the story in a beautiful way. And we've seen students doing that. We've seen students who have struggled with anxiety and depression their whole life. Starting now, they're older and they're starting to look back and they're seeing young people post-pandemic who are also studying, are striving and struggling with and wrestling with, this situation of depression, anxiety. And they're like, oh, I know what that's felt. I know what that's like. I can empathize with you and I can step in with you and talk about it. That's real, in real time. They don't have an education. They don't have the degree, but I understand you and I get you and I can walk through this with you. Your current circumstances, and that's where the focus comes in.
Okay. Talk about that.
I can use my circumstances. I can use my life. I can use my belief. I can use my connection. I can use the fact that I trust that there's something better. And now I'm a couple years further than you, and I'm starting to see it. I can turn around and focus back and say, hey, I know what that's like. I can focus with you.
Yeah.
Let me help you. Let me walk with you. And this comes back to the community of believers, that your circumstances are always teaching you something. Now, I am a challenger. I love a challenge. I love hard things. I love doing hard things. But maybe my favorite thing about hard things is what I learned through hard things. And we've had some hard things this year.
Yeah.
And I'm never going back. You know, like, just God is just up to something bigger. And I believe that. I'm connecting, I'm trusting, and I'm focused.
That's really good.
And I think every circumstance that we go through, because we don't know the end game, you know, cancer can go one of two ways. And there are a lot of decisions in the middle there that people have to make. And so when you think about that, yeah, that's devastating and it's hard, but at the same time, I'd say this a lot and it's really rude. It's super like in your face, but like, y'all, we all are going to die. This is not a get out of life alive thing. It's not a thing. The idea of a stay safe culture, nothing's safe.
Right.
So it doesn't exist. You know, we're chasing a dream of something that eventually ends anyway. And I'm not trying to make people depressed. I'm saying, so there's something more that we can connect to, believe in, that can help us focus on the hope that we have in the future and what that can look like after we go through our circumstances.
That's really, really good. All right. Well, before we end, I just wanted to give you a chance to talk about your world a little bit. We just had an incredible Next Gen event last night at Hopevale. I love our Next Gen ministries here at Hopevale. As a campus pastor, I love them because I know how good we take care of families, and I know the focus and the intentionality that goes into all the things that we do. So on a Sunday morning, the kids ministry that takes place, the way we point kids to Jesus, love what our teams do there. Love events like we had last night, Family FX. If you missed it, you missed it.
Yeah.
It's
all the
over.
way
It was
around.
really good. Lots of conversations in the Murray household that came from what we experienced there, with the activities that were planned and then the production that took place in the auditorium as well. Just an incredible event. Love. And with our family, we have a son that's in kids ministry, and then we had a son that was in the preteen ministry and is now in youth. So also getting to see through his experience what our preteen ministry is all about in 4, 5, 6, and what that team does is incredible. And the way they meet you and as a parent, and then your child as an awkward preteen in the midst of that awkwardness, and enable through that awkwardness to let preteens move towards Jesus and trust Jesus, all these things we're talking about. And then in your world, youth, our son that was a preteen is stepping into youth this year, has gone to some summer events and has loved those so far. And as a campus pastor, I've seen how important it is for our students to get involved in youth and what Jesus has done in their life. So wanted to give you a chance to talk about youth ministry. What is, if you could say one thing, because a lot of the people that watch the Deeper Dive or listen to it may not have students anymore. They may not be in that world anymore, so they may not know what's going on with youth. So what do you want all of those people to know about what's going on in the youth ministry at Hopevale?
Oh yeah, man. I love these students. I love them. I love them. And I wish people got to know them. They're bright. They're curious. This generation right now is just over a lot of the stuff that we, for years, the church has kind of built their world on, and like attraction and kind of bringing people in. And they're like, no, we don't care about any of that. We want fluorescent lights and real talk.
Right.
We want authenticity over anything, because we've seen so many. We will never compete in the youth world with the concert that Harry Styles is throwing down. We're not going to compete. We're not. I mean, the production value is unbelievable.
Right.
So they don't care. They want real and raw and authentic relational ministry,
Which is what you guys focus on.
that's all we do. Yeah. And we've seen the worship I mean, we've seen students engage with Jesus in a way that is, it's encouraging, it's refreshing. I wish that we could pull our energy from the youth environment into an adult morning, just by way of the fact that when we do worship, the students go to the front of the stage alone. I mean, just by they're in it and they're all in.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. And I don't know where we learn sometimes, and it depends on how you're raised and things like that, on like even raising hands or just engaged. They're engaged. And we have a very engaged youth ministry.
Yeah.
FX last night. My favorite part of the FX experience is looking around and seeing all of our students who are volunteering. They don't do the kids thing every morning on Sunday mornings, but this was a big event, and they gave up their Sunday afternoon from 2:00 till 8:00. They gave up a whole day in their summer to serve kids and families.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
It's amazing.
Yeah, like that gets me pumped up.
That's really good.
So serving is one of our big pillars this year. We've created over the time, different pillars, and serving is our big pillar this year. We're going after with our students that you will actually grow more when you serve. It's a step for you. If maybe your next step in your walk with God is to serve, is to connect. It's life with purpose. Is to have a life with purpose. You got to get out there and explore what it is that you want to do, and who you want to help and engage and rub elbows with.
Yeah.
So I've got a mastermind vision for this church, and it involves y'all hanging out with these young people. And
so talk about that. That's what I was a youth pastor one day. So I'm going to lob you up another softball. You talked about the beauty of the church being a place where unschooled, ordinary people walk alongside people with a little more experience, come together to do something extraordinary. So if someone's listening and maybe they're a little bit further down the road, maybe they have some education, maybe they have some wisdom, all that, if the Lord speaks to them and leads them, what's the best way for them to get involved and start working with some unschooled, ordinary youth?
Yeah.
Because I know as a youth pastor, you always need more help. So if we have some people that maybe are in that world, that have some time, that have some energy to offer to what Jesus is doing in our youth here at Hopevale, what's the best way for them to get connected to that?
Yeah, I mean, the best way, we do have a volunteer form that they can fill out on the web, or you just show up.
Right.
We'll put you to work. We'll pair you with another adult so that we can make sure that you're not a crazy person and make sure
background
you're safe.
check, all that. Yeah,
we do all that stuff. And your first time in, you hang out with me. I keep my eye on people, and because we don't want to do the background check unless you're serious. It's like it costs money. It's a budget concern, so we're not going to waste a background check on somebody. And I know that sounds terrible, but that's calculated leadership, So, but getting in and getting involved. I mean, we got a 4, 5, 6 environment. We've got youth environments. We've got kids environments in Bay City. We got kids environments in Saginaw, and I mean, everybody needs people. But if you're there, I think the funny thing is those people who have the wisdom and discernment and more experience are saying, "Oh, I could never do that. I don't have enough education." And it's like, dude, okay, let me do what I do, and you come and tell these kids. Because some of these students are sharp, and they can engage with a 58-year-old person at a high level.
And like what you said, they care more about an authentic relationship than they do about credentials, right?
I had this one leader in my career that was so good. We just call her Grams. And she was so good. Every senior class went through her. Like, that was you won. You made it. Grams is in your class, and girls, these young women were like, I mean, just soaking up wisdom, just soaking it up.
Yeah,
I mean, it was awesome. You would see these young ladies go from girls to women in a year. It was unbelievable, and they were ready for everything next. It was awesome.
So Grams and Gramps, if you're listening, we need you. So
in every environment,
connect with Brent, any of our next gen team, and see what Jesus may want to do to work in and through you in an authentic relationship.
And if you're in Bay
with the
City,
next generation,
if you're in Bay City, they can connect with you. You're a connector. You know, Sam is a connector.
Yeah.
So now that he's back, you can connect with Sam. I mean, you guys aren't. We
both have
hoarders.
some youth ministry experience.
Yeah, you're not hoarders. You throw them. We want people to be placed where they feel where they feel engaged and they feel energized.
Where they can serve in abundance.
Yes, yeah.
Definitely.
Somewhere where it doesn't feel like you're doing it. Like, we don't want you if it's a job for you. We want you if it gives you life.
That's awesome.
And you leave on a Sunday and you can't sleep because you're so excited.
Well, thank you, Brent. We appreciate you so much.
My
Appreciate
pleasure, man.
the energy the Lord brings through you, and appreciate you bringing the message that you did and challenging us in the way that you did, and praying that we can take that and remember that it's the Spirit who gives us power. It's Jesus' life through the Spirit that gives us everything we need to continue the movement of hope that we see in that Acts church, as Jesus continues to work today to draw people near to the Father, to give hope, bring redemption, restoration, all of it. So we want to thank you also for listening today. Thank you for giving us some of your time. We hope you join us again next week when we take a deeper dive. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for watching the Deeper Dive video podcast. To check out our full library, make sure to subscribe by clicking the button below. Also, make sure to select the bell icon in order to be notified of any new content as it is posted. If you would like to give to the Lord here at Hopevale and support the ministry, you can give by visiting hopevale.org/give. Thank you again for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you and your family at Hopevale Church.